Would you dare to stay in a haunted house? This man had just disembarked from the train. And since it was late, he reluctantly accepted the real estate agent's offer for this house. Though the place appeared old and dilapidated, the thought of working for 2 months before moving on, combined with the agent's friendly service, made him indifferent to the situation. However, as soon as the man stepped inside and shut the door, a devious smile crept across the agent's face. Despite the elder's warning that the room was haunted, the young man, embodying the spirit of modernity, dismissed such superstitions. He muttered under his breath about how ridiculous it was to believe in such things as he gazed down the dark hallway. Little did he know, hands were slowly reaching out for him from behind. Meanwhile, in the room, a tenant was experiencing horrors beyond comprehension. In the shadows, a demon stealthily approached. Time swiftly passed to the next day. The real estate agent was jolted awake by a punch. Standing before him was Old Lady Long, accompanied by a police officer investigating the case. It turned out he had been knocked to the ground and passed out the night before. The tenant had died of a heart attack in the same night. While this old, crumbling house had no surveillance cameras. With a grim expression, Old Lady Long interrogated him about why he had rented out a haunted house. Now, he had caused the tenant's death. The once skeptical agent now found cold sweat dripping down his forehead. A crowd had gathered around the house, eager to witness the spectacle. Among the crowd was a man named Tang Ka, a member of the Ye Than Tu organization, responsible for investigating this bizarre case. However, he sensed no supernatural forces or energy. It appeared that this task would be quite challenging. At that moment, he began to perform hand signs to activate his magical watch. This was the sacred cedar of Taoism, possessing the power to probe and provide substantial support. It could observe the colors of souls around. Blue represented ordinary humans, white for the deceased, yellow for those like the protagonist, and red indicated demonic beings. At that moment, his left eye emitted a golden light. Under the cedar's guidance, the entire building suddenly became transparent, revealing its true form. Yet, as he scanned the area, he found no targets. Nevertheless, the challenges only fueled his intrigue. Just then, a voice called out to him. Turning around, he saw a chubby little boy sniffling. The boy reasoned that Tang Ka's recent movements were signs of fire. Proudly, he declared that he knew as well. He then raised his hand, mimicking a gesture, and unleashed a torrent of water. But when he glanced to the side, Tang Ka had vanished. Even the boy's lollipop had disappeared. At that moment, Tang Ka was sitting on the roof behind, sneering disdainfully. What I just did wasn't ninja work, it was a countdown. He then pondered over this mission, realizing just how well hidden the target truly was. It seems like you need to return and think carefully about how to capture them. When you find them, you must teach them a powerful lesson. This girl wants to rent a haunted house for a live stream. Despite being warned that someone died last night, she shows no fear. The agent, feeling helpless, hands her the keys. Meanwhile, he cannot keep up. The girl sits at the dining table eating noodles. Beneath the table, a wicked hand stealthily reaches out. It immediately moves towards her ankle. But she suddenly stands up, remembering she hasn't stuck up her idol's pictures not only on the door but also on the window. At that moment, the light from the ceiling flickers several times before going out completely. Nearby, the closet emits strange sounds. The girl appears terrified but gathers her courage to step forward and loudly calls. Whoever is in there, come out. At that moment, the closet door trembles and opens a crack. A terrifying face slowly emerges. It turns out to be a friend. The girl suddenly pales and rushes to grasp the closet door, pulling it open with all her might. Then, she unzips her bag, and out flies a rooster with glowing red eyes. This rooster is named Wo-Wo, a four-legged black rooster that can summon any spirit into existence. Wo-Wo knows it's time to make his appearance. He flaps his wings and flies toward the closet. The girl slams the door shut with all her strength. Moments later, the inside erupts with loud crashes and horrific screams. Finally, the closet door can't withstand it and shatters into pieces. Wo-Wo bursts out and is shoved into a backpack. Then, a gaunt demon crawls out from within. It strides menacingly toward the girl, growling with anger. I will eat you. Instantly, it opens its mouth wide like a basin, ready to bite her. Rows of sharp fangs sprout from its mouth, looking terrifying, but in the next moment, it is sent crashing to the ground by a punch. Terrified, the demon stutters. Who are you? The girl smirks disdainfully. In the air, she draws a glowing circle, and the camouflage covering her begins to fade away. I am Tang Ka, the champion of spirit capturing from U City. A flicker of fear crosses the demon's eyes. Realizing she is from U City, Tang Ka looks down on it. even if this demon's hiding abilities are superior to normal. But considering strength, just a finger from you could handle it. The demon, now filled with dread, attempts to flee, but Wo's power restrains it, tearing its body with several wounds. It tries to dash for the exit, but as soon as it touches the door, a piercing sound from behind halts it in its tracks. A blinding golden light erupts, shocking it and revealing its true form. Tang Ka was not expecting this demon to be so weak he hadn't even needed to lift a finger. The true form of this once terrifying demon is merely a plump little creature. It turned out to be just a foolish spirit. Seeing it tremble in fear, Tang Ka gently tapped its head with one finger. The pitiful little spirit explained that it couldn't leave, it had to wait for someone. It then recounted its experiences once living in ancient times. It was naturally shy. The only thing it excelled at was hiding. Because of this, it was used by the Spirit City. And later, when their collaboration was exposed, the entire team was wiped out, leaving it as the sole survivor. However, it was badly injured and had hidden away in this cupboard to sleep. Upon waking, it found itself in the modern world. A blind old woman discovered it, and they lived together, treating each other kindly. But one day, the old woman fell to the ground and did not wake up. No matter how much it called, there was no response, and then some people came to carry her away. Subsequently, a blind old woman found him, and they lived together. The old woman was very kind to him, but one day, she fell to the ground and fell asleep, unresponsive no matter how he called. After a while, some people came and carried her away. Thus, the little spirit decided to wait here for the old woman to wake up, hoping to return. Upon hearing this, Tang Ka understood the story and realized that the old woman had passed away. Unable to bear the incessant chatter of the little spirit, he interrupted her and opened the information scanning app. Scanning a bit of information, the screen lit up with the results target identified as the elder spirit. An extinct species, with extinction occurring during the Northern Jiang era due to hunting. After reviewing, Tang Ka focused intently on the little spirit and remarked, even if there are few tasks to accomplish, capturing you is still quite intriguing. But capturing you is indeed engaging, and the extinct spirits in the black market hold great value. The mention of the black market sent the little spirit into a frenzy of horrifying thoughts, causing her to cry out and struggle. Seeing this, Tang Ka quickly retracted his teasing words. He gently lifted the little spirit and reassured her that he wouldn't sell her off, and that the old woman would never return. From now on, you need not feel lonely, frightened, or helpless anymore, for I will protect you. Elder spirit, I shall name you Little Black. Upon hearing that someone was willing to accept her, the little spirit was moved to tears and nodded earnestly in agreement. Soon after, Tang Ka produced a miniature Xu Long, drawing Little Black inside it. Amidst her cries, Little Black was completely sucked into the Xu Long, convinced that Tang Ka had tricked her. Trapped, she screamed that all humans were deceitful. However, Tang Ka chose not to clarify. Instead, he pulled out his phone, glanced at the mission submission interface, and pressed the failure button, concealing the little spirit's whereabouts. Meanwhile, at a bustling construction site, some workers were animatedly discussing that they had unearthed an artifact, but this one looked like a jar, estimated to weigh several hundred pounds, wrapped in 2 thick ropes. Some were very curious, saying it resembled a broken wine jar at their home, while others claimed it looked like a vegetable pot. At this moment, a man named Old Zhang stepped forward. Stop guessing and just open it to find out instantly. He entered and saw the lid filled with strange characters that looked like they were scratched by a dog. Old Zhang couldn't make sense of it, so he opened the lid. As the lid fell to the ground, the bizarre characters slowly dissolved into the air. After a while, Old Zhang remained unresponsive. A few people behind him called out, wanting to take a look, but they had no idea that Old Zhang was already bleeding from his nose, his body resembling that of a desiccated corpse. The energy from his body was flowing toward this strange vessel. Meanwhile, on a rain-soaked night, a girl was speeding down the road. She had just accepted a large order but was running late. At this moment, she decided to accelerate. Fortunately, the road was relatively empty at night. At this speed, she would definitely make it. But just then, she collided with something. The girl was thrown off her bike, crashing hard onto the ground. Confused, she wondered what she had hit. As the road ahead was clearly empty, the rain poured down heavier, drenching the scene. Suddenly, a terrifying monster gradually emerged. This girl was named Zhuang Xiaoran. Earlier that morning, she had argued with her relatives. Her mother had abandoned them when she was young, and her father had passed away, forcing her to live with her relatives. She needed to earn money to search for her mother, the woman she longed to call mom, hoping to make her regret leaving her behind. But now, she had only saved up half of what she needed. If she worked a little harder, she was sure to achieve her goal soon. Her aunt had come knocking that morning, complaining that she didn't wake up early enough. Coming home late didn't help at all. And then borrowing food was just shameless. But under this roof, one couldn't help but bow their head. Xiaoran couldn't make excuses. She could only think about asking her aunt if there was anywhere else to stay. In the living room, the woman continued to voice her grievances. Initially claiming she would only stay a few days, she had now been there for nearly half a year. The man, however, paid no mind since after all, she was his niece. Everyone else seemed indifferent who truly cared, frustrated that she couldn't make herself understood. The woman stormed off to work. After her aunt left, Xiaoran sighed in relief and headed to the bathroom to wash her face. But while she was washing, the back door suddenly creaked open. The man looked at Zhang Xiaoran's figure with an ambiguous gaze. Little did he know, he had developed sinister thoughts about his own niece. While Xiaoran was washing her face, she suddenly felt someone standing behind her. Turning around, she discovered her uncle had been there without her noticing. He explained that he had come to grab some dental floss. Xiaoran still felt uneasy. Even though this was her own home, it didn't mean she could act freely. The man, using the pretext of retrieving dental floss, unexpectedly pressed close to her. The distance was too close, she could even smell the scent from her hair. Things were escalating beyond comfort. He stared intently at her body with ill intent, reminiscing about when he used to carry her around as a child. "I can't believe you've grown up so fast," he said, reflecting on how just a blink of an eye had transformed her into a woman. He even inquired about her phone balance, which was 500.000. A girl coming home late like this could easily lead others to misconstrue her intentions. Moments later, he leans close to Xiaoyan's ear and says with a smile that if she needs money, all she has to do is listen to him, and he will give it to her. Xiaoyan feels deeply disappointed. She never expected her seemingly kind uncle to be such a person. For a loathsome person like him, she had no desire to utter another word. Turning her back, she delivered a swift kick to his sensitive spot and walked away with an air of liberation. But now, she had to think of a new place to stay. Xiaoyan wheeled her luggage down the street, catching sight of a warm, happy family of 3, which stirred a pang of sadness within her. However, she quickly regained her composure, her gaze resolute as she reminded herself that today she must strive to earn money. To achieve this goal, she had to juggle multiple jobs, starting at 9 a.m. as a modeling intern, then at 1 p.m. serving tables at a restaurant, and finally at 6 p.m., she would be out delivering orders. Watching Xiaoyan's silhouette fade away, a student beside her wondered why such a delightful girl chose delivery work. The teacher chuckled and replied, "Although I don't know why she works so hard, I can confidently say that she truly loves riding her motorcycle. Thus, for her, delivering orders might just be a way to relieve daily stress." Meanwhile, the scene shifted to a pedestrian street where Tang Ka was gazing at the goods before him, unsure of what to choose. Just then, the delivery girl, and Xiaoyan, whizzed by on her bike. At that moment, the compass strapped to Tang Ka's side suddenly shook violently. Filled with curiosity, he opened it to check, but the needle spun wildly. Then, countless red threads appeared, weaving through the bustling crowd, ultimately latching onto Xiaoyan. At this moment, Tang Ka recalled the words of his mentor from his childhood: the black butterfly compass could locate people, objects, and even spirits. It could also predict fortune and misfortune. If the red thread appeared, it meant a deadly connection, and whoever was linked would surely meet their end. Countless possibilities raced through Tang Ka's mind as he gazed at the dancing red thread. Looking towards the direction of the flying red thread in this crowded place made it exceedingly difficult to search. Moreover, each person carried their own fate even with a new compass. He couldn't do anything. Just then, a ringing echoed from his pocket. He pulled out his phone to take a look. To his surprise, an order had been sent down from above. Among them was a rare grader order. The system notified him that he had the right to accept it. Would he like to proceed viewing the information on his phone? Tang Ka's face broke into a radiant smile. Today was indeed a fortuitous day. The scene shifted. Currently, at the excavation site, the discovery of the ancient urn had become a hot topic of discussion. Many workers rushed over to take a look. However, strangely, the initial discoverers of the urn had vanished without a trace. At that moment, someone noticed something peculiar around the urn. Upon stepping closer, they found a chaotic mess of clothes and shoes, and the ground was stained with dark liquid. The workers gradually gathered, discussing the mysterious disappearances and the scattered garments. Just then, the urn suddenly began to bubble ominously. A gurgling sound echoed as the crowd whispered in unease. Sensing something was about to rise, just as they feared, a head slowly emerged from the depths of the vessel. Suddenly, a loud crash resounded, and a colossal monster burst forth. The workers, upon seeing it, were drenched in cold sweat, their hearts racing in terror. On the shore sat a withered corpse, its body entwined with roots. This cadaver was the sacrificial offering of an ancient village, a seal against malevolent spirits. Anyone who dared to drive a stake into this body would lose their ability to commit evil, lest they face dire consequences. The workers had never witnessed such a bizarre spectacle. Panic set in as they scrambled in all directions, shouting that a ghost was among them. But it was too late. The corpse opened its mouth, and one worker's essence drained from his eyes and mouth, followed by another, and then more, one after another. All of their essences converged into the mouth of the corpse. Even those workers standing far off were not spared. They too slowly gathered, forming a colossal sphere composed of countless bodies. Beneath this ominous globe lay the corpse, still seated by the lake. As the life force continuously surged forth, the workers shrank back like deflating balloons, quickly dissolving into a pool of black liquid, leaving only their clothes and helmets floating in the air. Meanwhile, the corpse, now sated, leapt into the lake. A golden light erupted from its eyes as it tilted its head skyward and screamed, its body enveloped in a terrifying aura. Suddenly, flesh began to sprout from its form. In the distance, a cracking sound was heard as a bony tail emerged. The atmosphere exploded with a powerful energy. This creature, a manifestation of 1,000 years of accumulated resentment, possessed an undying body and 4 eyes capable of seeing the souls of others. This body was blessed with immortality and heightened instincts, known as the Yuan Tiao. The corpse that had slept for a millennium absorbed all the life force of the workers, transforming into the Yuan Tiao. But as it gazed upon its own arm, a fog of confusion enveloped it. Who am I? Why have I become this way? Just then, a raindrop landed in its palm. This drop awoke deep-seated memories within its mind. It was a rainy day when the villagers coldly regarded it before being dragged to the sacrificial altar. Soon after, several figures rushed in to restrain its body, violently driving stakes into it. Instantly, a sensation of pain like tearing flesh surged through it. It yearned to cry out for help, but the surrounding people were reveling in joy. In the distance, a youth with white hair laughed merrily. The memories were hazy and incomplete, yet it roared in rage, calling out a name: Batten. As its muscles tensed, the stake driven deep into its back only sank further. Soon after, the stake emitted a faint pressure, and the Yuan Tiao could no longer withstand the excruciating pain, collapsing to the ground. Yet, trouble was not limited to the stake in its back. Figures were approaching from afar. In a flash, the Yuan Tiao activated its 4 eyes. This was his unique ability, allowing him to observe targets from afar, their souls and colors, their very essence. As his vision expanded, he noticed Tang Ka approaching. Though he didn't recognize him, his instincts screamed for him to flee swiftly. Although restrained by the nail that limits his power, Nguyen Chiu has now become extremely weak. However, he refuses to remain idle. His heart is filled with hatred, and he must find that person to return all the suffering he has endured over the years. Even if it takes 1.000 years, even if it takes 10.000 years, he will not give up. As he was crossing the road, a blinding light suddenly rushed towards him. Immediately after, there was a collision, and Chiu Enna was thrown to the side, while Nguyen Chiu, who had just undergone an upgrade, was weakened from being tortured by the soldiers. While fleeing, he was hit by a motorcycle. He thought he was being attacked, but the woman who hit him was severely injured. However, there was no time to think. At that moment, Nguyen Chiu sensed that those pursuing him were closing in. And in his current state, he was absolutely no match for those pursuers. Now, there was only one option left. After making his decision, he slowly walked towards Chiu Enna. To the eyes of ordinary people, souls are invisible, only appearing as faint images blurred by the falling rain. They thought they were seeing an illusion. And Chiu Enna, gravely injured and unable to bear it any longer, closed her eyes. At that moment, Nguyen Chiu had reached her, while the souls behind him swayed like seaweed, moving closer. Immediately after, they entered her body, as more and more souls were released, and Chiu Enna was now completely enveloped. The souls, like liquid, seeped into her wounds and began the process of healing, traveling through her bloodstream toward her heart. The cells merged with the souls, causing a mutation. After the integration was complete, and Chiu Enna opened her eyes, which now resembled those of a strange beast. As she awoke, Nguyen Chiu disappeared. The nail, having lost its target, fell to the ground. At the same time, Tang Ka finally arrived at the construction site, but as he looked around, He realized he was too late. The entire site was now lifeless. It was shocking that so much had changed in such a short time. So many people had died. It seemed he needed to find him quickly. As he was thinking about his next move, the compass on his waist began to shake violently. Meanwhile, Ena had left the scene, heading straight toward the city. At that moment, a flash of lightning lit up the sky. His face had begun to show the features of Ena. And Ena, who had just been in an accident, was now merged with another being. At this moment, he was walking along the road back to the city. A small cat crossed his path. Its eyes filled with confusion, as if it were questioning him with a bewildered gaze. Next, in his eyes, the girl in front of him gradually revealed her true form as Ena. As she passed by, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. But the cat, watching her figure, displayed a ferocious expression. Ena, rare to encounter in 100 years. And yet I crossed paths with one. But now, she appears so fragile. As these thoughts crossed his mind, the cat immediately grew greedy, turning back to cry out to the girl, seizing this opportunity to consume her. The influx of spiritual energy would surge immensely. However, Yuan Tiao remained unfazed. Just as he was about to be attacked, he suddenly turned his head, his icy gaze locking onto the creature. His finger brushed past a streak of deep golden light that erupted violently. The street light, swept by the force of Yu Bok, was instantly split in half. The nearest beloved cat was also cleaved in two. He never expected such formidable power from his opponent. Clearly weak, yet with just a flick of a finger, he had been bested. At that moment, regret washed over him. If he had known, he would have continued to feign cuteness to snag a meal. But now, it was far too late. The corners of Yuan Tiao's mouth curled upwards as he melded into this body, simultaneously breaking free from the soldiers vying for him. He was no longer bound. His entire strength had been restored. At this moment, he decided to find someone to test his current power. He crouched down, gathering momentum, and instantly soared into the sky, flying off into the distance. Before long, he spotted a city ahead. A brilliant golden light streaked across the sky as Yuan Tiao landed atop a skyscraper. Surveying the bustling streets below, he found himself bewildered, unable to comprehend why the people in the city dressed so scantily. Yet, he was certain that here resided descendants of the rustic folk. We shall ensure their complete annihilation. Contemplating vengeance, he opened his mouth wide, unleashing a torrent of green light. Instantly, the crowd below clutched their throats, gasping for air, while terrified souls erupted from their bodies, fleeing in panic. The influence grew ever wider. Millions of terrified souls from across the city converged upon the rooftop. Meanwhile, Yuan Tiao was ravenously absorbing this colossal spiritual power. He was determined to drain the souls of all the city's residents to exact his revenge. Alarms blared at the headquarters of Ye Than too. Looking at the large screen in the command room, warning signals flashed incessantly, the crisis rapidly expanding into the red zone. General Han Long Koi's face darkened. He never expected such a situation to arise so soon after taking office. Wasn't this the matter of Zhuang Xiaoran? Where is that brat now? Even if he could contact him, it might be too late. Perhaps the only option left was to summon someone from that other world. Just as Han Long Koi was hesitating, a subordinate rushed in to report. Data indicated that in less than 3 minutes, the residents of Bangsun would be wiped out. Recently, there was only one Tang Ka-class Yersi who had been dispatched to him. But given his current position, it seemed unlikely they would reach in time. Hearing this, Han Long Koi no longer hesitated, immediately arranging an emergency contact with the protection team and ordering 2 guards to be dispatched at once. The subordinate exclaimed in astonishment, "Are we really mobilizing the guards?" The guards were beings from another world, part of the protection team of Ye Than, responsible for security at the Lang Din prison, including any severe incidents caused by spirit beings. At this moment, the scene transitioned. On the towering structure, Nguyen Tu was frantically absorbing an immense amount of soul power. As he finally completed the process, he sensed a disturbance from behind. Turning his head, he was startled to see a strange symbol and a red beam of light shoot across the surface of the distant building. A human figure emerged. As the light dissipated, 2 guards, one stout and one thin, stood firm with bronze masks covering their faces, witnessing only a single Ye Lin before them. The stout one scoffed, "We were sent here just to deal with one Ye Lin." The thin one reminded him to take the situation seriously. According to the information provided by the humans, their target was a Ye Lin that rarely appeared in hundreds of years. And even more perplexing, it was a woman. This sounded bizarre. After hearing this, the stout one immediately leaped forward. he decided to test his might against her. In an instant, he charged forward, his claws slicing through the air, creating a streak of golden light. Meanwhile, Nguyen Tu was not idle. He smiled, gathering strength in his legs and rushing ahead. In the blink of an eye, his knee collided with the stout one's face. The stout guard was sent sprawling backward. Quickly regaining his footing, he fell, but fortune smiled upon him as a nearby steel beam broke his fall, preventing him from hitting the ground. The thin one observed this with a calm demeanor. As Nguyen Tu finished off the stout one, he had drawn near. "It seems you're much stronger than him." Before he could finish his sentence, his expression suddenly shifted, and he swiftly adjusted his stance to create some distance. Without warning, he opened his mouth, releasing the soul power he had just absorbed uncontrollably, forming a burst of green light that shot straight into the sky. The soul that Nguyen Tu had just absorbed escaped his grasp, and one of his eyes returned to its normal state. At that moment, Tu Enna had regained part of her consciousness. However, she realized that both her head and body were beyond her control. Meanwhile, Nguyen Tu sensed the situation worsening. After struggling to regain his strength, it was a pity to see it slip away. The thin one, witnessing this scene, was equally bewildered by the unfolding events. He then inquired about the situation. Seeking clarification, the stout one responded that based on the analysis of the previous strike, Nguyen Tu's speed and strength were both at A-rank. Then what remains is defense. I must test it myself. At that moment, Nguyen Tu's expression turned ferocious as he exerted all his might to suppress Tu Enna's consciousness. His pupils gradually shifted back to a golden hue, while the thin one drew his weapon, the ice jade sword. Instantly, a wall of ice formed, releasing a chilling aura that momentarily immobilized Nguyen Tu. However, just moments later, he shattered the ice and broke free. Energy surged around his body, pulsating with intensity. The thin one immediately retreated, on high alert, while the stout one unexpectedly launched a surprise attack from behind. A solid strike landed, but he did not linger. Instead, he withdrew instantly. The thin one raised his sword skyward, directing it towards Nguyen Tu. Suddenly, dozens of black spikes shot down, pressing tightly towards him. As the shimmering sword light descended from the frail figure's hand, a barrage of dark projectiles relentlessly targeted the enemy. After a prolonged moment of chaos, a cloud of dust dissipated, restoring the landscape. At that moment, the voice of Yuan Tiao echoed. "How ridiculous! You think you can defeat me with such feeble power?" Clearly, these techniques inflicted no harm upon him whatsoever. The thin man, witnessing this scene, couldn't help but admire. The defense was indeed at the A-grade level. Yuan Tiao's strength was truly formidable. He then turned to glance at the stout figure. The stout man had just completed gathering his energy, unleashing a dark orb from his hands. Yuan Tiao, eager to charge forward, suddenly found his body immobilized. He realized he was ensnared by a formation that the stout man had meticulously prepared. As the formation activated, the energy of heaven and earth surged, trapping Yuan Tiao not only physically but also plunging his consciousness into a deep slumber. Soon after, Yuan Tiao knelt down, slipping into a state of unconsciousness. However, he proved to be far stronger than anticipated. Despite this, the formation could only confine him for 2 minutes. The stout man couldn't help but exclaim, "What on earth has he been through in his life? He must possess thousands of years of cultivation." Even without consciousness, he had entered a state of self-preservation. Short-term attacks could do nothing against him. It was astonishing how powerful Yuan Tiao was. Even an A-grade beastmaster was powerless against him. The commander, through the flying device, inquired about the battle situation. He soon discovered that while the soul had been freed, Yuan Tiao was under control. However, before they could eliminate him, the souls could not return to their bodies. If Yuan Tiao broke the seal and was killed, it would be too late. The souls in the sky, if left wandering for too long, would gradually dissipate, leading to the complete death of those who had lost their souls. They were now caught in a dilemma. Yet, they had to save the residents. Han Longkush's expression turned grave as he asked if there was any solution. The thin man earnestly replied, "Actually, there is a way. Exile." Upon hearing this term, Han Longkoi broke out in a cold sweat. The subordinates behind him were equally stunned, unable to believe it. Previously, he had heard a colleague mention that within the headquarters lay a mysterious gem capable of sealing numerous ancient spirits inside, thus allowing humans to control them. That place was referred to as the Third World. However, to exile Yuan Tiao there required time to report to superiors. Acting independently would surely result in punishment. Han Longkoi, resolute, furrowed his brow and declared, "Exile him immediately." Hearing this, The subordinates were left speechless. They reminded him that they had yet to report. Han Longkush's voice rang out again. The lives of the people are at stake, there's no time left. I will bear all consequences. The thin man confirmed once more, and without hesitation, he began forming the seal. Then, numerous pale golden rings radiated outward. Next, he chanted a passage from the incantation. No sooner had he spoken than a spark of golden light flickered at his fingertip, shooting skyward. At that moment, the sky cracked open like a swirling vortex. The golden light spread in all directions. And below, Tang Qi located this place with precision. The red thread on the compass was now guiding him here. Tang Qi gazed at the sky with a serious expression. It was truly coincidental. All to save a soul. It's time to banish Yuan Tiao to the third world. As the thin man finished chanting the incantation, the sky spiraled into a vortex. A golden light radiated outward, and from within this whirlwind emerged a colossal head, its mouth wide open, unleashing a torrent of golden light. The beam shot directly at those who had lost consciousness. Under the brilliance of the light pillar, Yuan Tiao was bound, and the protective barrier shattered. His body shot skyward. At this moment, the thread on the compass was drawing closer to its target. Observing this scene, Tang Qi felt a twinge of doubt. Why was the same kind of murderous aura emanating from him? However, this shadow seemed familiar. After a moment of contemplation, he realized it was the girl on the motorcycle he had brushed past tonight. Immediately, he channeled his spiritual energy and, upon scanning, discovered that his soul had merged with the demon spirit. This meant he was half human. This was the first time Tang Qi encountered such a situation, and he felt a surge of excitement. Without hesitation, he soared into the light pillar. An opportunity like this was rare as a 1,000-year comet. He had long desired to enter that world. Moments later, he stood before the gigantic beast and without a moment's pause, dove right in. Everyone watched in wide-eyed bewilderment. Had that kid lost his mind? A subordinate cautiously asked if the thin man could release Tang Qi. But he received a negative response from Han Longkoi. That's a one-way trip. No one has ever dared to enter. We don't even know what severe consequences could arise. Moreover, even if he returns alive, I will have to eliminate him. That kid has never listened to a word. Meanwhile, in the chaotic world, a massive light column also illuminated the dark surroundings. The demon spirits below were closely monitoring all that transpired. A colossal light beam appeared in the sky, and the demon spirits below, who were feasting, caught sight of it. His name was Lei Yin. In this gloom, he had lost track of how many years he had endured. To grow stronger, he fought against other demon spirits each day. Finally, he awaited this moment. As he soared into the sky, he silently vowed to find a city upon leaving and confront the monster that had sealed him away. However, as he reached out, flames suddenly engulfed his arm, and a surge of energy erupted in the void, engulfing him in flames. When the light vanished, his intact body was left with only one eye. Yet, with his abilities, as long as a single organ remained, he could restore his original form. But just at that moment, he collided with a face. The figure immediately raised a cruel hand and swung it toward him. Screaming something horrifying, how disgusting! Zhuang Xiaoran followed the shadow of his sister landing on the ground. But when he looked around, he realized she was nowhere near him. He stood frozen, a feeling of frustration swelling within him. However, he caught the attention of a forest-dwelling creature named Lala. This beast, resembling a wild boar, stared hungrily at Zhuang Xiaoran, drool dripping onto the ground. Initially, it had only wanted to see who was the unfortunate soul trapped here. But it never expected to encounter a human. Truly, a delicious offering presented on a silver platter. Yet, it remained oblivious that the young man before it was also gazing back. A sinister smile creeping across his face. Simultaneously, and Chu Nu lay on the ground, her features gradually fading from existence. After a moment, he abruptly sprang to his feet, exclaiming that the delivery would be delayed. In his memory, he was perhaps delivering goods before the collision, awakening to the sight of green fireworks. Yet, he discovered there was not a single wound on his body. And he found himself in this strange place. Looking around, aside from the dilapidated houses, there was no sign of life. Just as he pondered this, an impending danger loomed near. A creature opened its mouth wide, preparing to strike, now targeting Zhuang Xiaoran. A man and a cat were sprinting wildly through the streets. Zhuang Xiaoran sat above, calm and collected, while Lala was drenched in cold sweat, not daring to stop. It was not only because of the malevolent being perched on its back but also due to the countless terrifying creatures pursuing them. A bloodied mouth was aimed at Chu Nu. But in that moment, he felt an instinctual sense of danger and quickly ducked to avoid it. Slipping away like a gust of wind, Everything unfolded in an instant. Looking back at his own nimbleness and speed, he couldn't comprehend how he had managed that. Then he turned his head up to the rooftop. The creature, having retracted its neck, now stared at him with malicious eyes, and Qiu Nu immediately froze, thinking to herself, what on earth is that so disgusting? As fear surged within her, she instinctively turned to flee, but the creature suddenly leaped in front of her. It immediately stood tall. This was a large creature adorned with eye-like patterns on its back, capable of invoking the most painful and terrifying memories in its adversaries, rendering them incapable of fighting back. The patterns on its body emitted an ethereal blue glow. Moments later, and Qiu Nu, with dazed eyes, fell into her own memories. She recalled the first time she cried after falling while learning to ride a bike. Her parents arguing over educational matters. Yet the three of them were still very happy. But not long after, her father fell gravely ill. She sat by the bedside, crying for the second time. Her mother was busy earning money for medicine while also taking care of the household. Fortunately, after 3 years, her father recovered to his former self, and the family was joyful once more. Yet sadly, happiness did not last long as her father fell ill again. Unable to bear the burden any longer, mother chose to follow another man. Watching her get into the car with him marked the third time he cried. This time, father succumbed to his illness. At father's funeral, and Qiu Nu shed her final tears. From that moment on, she became an orphan, taken care of by relatives who came and went. But as time passed, those who were called family gradually grew weary of her. Eventually, a few of them discussed and decided to send her back to her mother. However, the first words from her mother after such a long separation were etched forever in Qiu Nu's memory. As she was attacked by a vengeful spirit, she slipped into a trance, recalling the moment father passed away. The tale of abandonment by her mother, the disdain from relatives wanting to bring her back, weighed heavily on her mind. Previously, she had heard whispers that her mother's current husband had failed in business and was now hiding from creditors in their hometown. Seeing her mother's weary appearance softened and Qiu Nu's resentment just a little. She had no expectations, only a yearning to embrace her mother one last time. However, the next words from her mother left her frozen in disbelief. Go back home, I have no money for you. Hearing those words, and Qiu Nu felt a bitterness that pierced her heart. From that moment, she could no longer recall the features of that woman. She wanted to cry, yet tears would not fall. Instead, she felt a deep ache in her chest. From that instant, she saw reality clearly. More important than love or kinship was the cold, hard truth of money. At that moment, she resolved to work tirelessly to earn enough money so that the woman who abandoned her would regret her choice. Soon after, at just 15 years old, she learned to work. To save money, she endured mockery from her relatives, shamelessly borrowing and even learning to fend for herself. Living on nothing but a loaf of bread, working over 10 hours a day was exhausting. Yet each time she checked her balance, a flicker of joy lit up her spirit. But now, doubts crept in. Was all this truly worthwhile even if she made that woman regret her actions? What then? She remained forever alone. Without family, without friends, and lacking even a dream. What was the meaning of her life? And Qiu Nu gazed into her own soul, tears streaming down her face. Under the influence of the spirit, she relinquished her desire to survive, realizing that an opportunity was drawing near. The vengeful spirit opened its mouth wide, ready to devour the girl. Just then, a fist as large as a sandbag slammed into its face, sending the spirit flying. The owner of that arm was none other than Zhuang Xiaoran. And Qiu Nu stood in a daze. Witnessing this scene, the man before her became the only light in her eyes. As the vengeful spirit was about to engulf her, in that split second, Zhuang Xiaoran transformed into a hero, delivering a powerful punch to save the damsel in distress. Watching the man come to her rescue, all her grievances and fears dissipated in an instant, and Qiu Nu burst into tears. Dai Lai, witnessing this, wanted to seize the moment to escape. But Zhuang Xiaoran noticed her, inquiring about the remaining time before the exit was sealed. Receiving the answer that there was still half a cup of tea left, he seemed satisfied, saying there was enough time for him to play for 2 more minutes. The girl behind him stealthily stood up and suddenly attacked in front of him. Using the same trick, Tang Jie was momentarily taken aback as the creature immediately opened its mouth, ready to bite him, but in response, it met with a merciless slap. What do you think you're doing in the end? He got slapped due to its foul breath. Li Lei, standing beside him, stared in disbelief. Suddenly, a rumbling sound grew closer. The two turned their heads towards the noise, only to see a horde of ferocious spirits of varying shapes charging towards them. At this moment, Tang Ji also became serious, instructing Conhu to stay behind and not to act recklessly. Now it's my turn to play. At this moment, his left hand crackled as streaks of green light appeared on the back of his hand. They then spread up his arm to his head. Once completed, the air shimmered with a ghostly green light. Tang Ji grinned wickedly. This move was too destructive to be used in the human world. It was restricted there, but here he could unleash it freely. Watching the approaching spirits, the man before them showed no fear, grinning malevolently as he invoked his magic. Bolts of lightning coiled around his arm, forming 3 lightning orbs, which he hurled towards the rampaging spirits. As the lightning orbs neared the spirits, they collided and merged, exploding amidst the horde. Instantly, the surrounding space was filled with crackling power. The spirits were struck by the lightning, their bodies trembling and howling incessantly. The devastation continued to expand, claiming even those airborne. Before long, the ground was strewn with the lifeless forms of the defeated. Tang Ji withdrew his power, turning to Conhu, who, before he could respond, wrapped her arms around him. Then, with a gentle push of her toes against the ground, a whirlwind whisked them into the sky. They soared into the sky, reaching an exit. Li, witnessing the demon's departure, finally sighed in relief, yet curiosity gnawed at her. Who was he that could leave without being captured? She had never seen, nor even heard of someone like him. Who exactly is this person? Meanwhile, in another location, several spirits were paying attention to Tang Ji's trajectory. One spirit inquired, "Should we investigate?" The other replied, "No, no one is allowed to move a step away from the master." His gaze shifted towards the narrowing entrance, within which a golden light was intensifying. Inside, they could see a golden gemstone, and within that gemstone, the so-called master was a headless demon king, adorned with mysterious black circles all over his form. At this moment, in another world, Han Long was still exuding a fragrant aura. His subordinates witnessed an unbelievable sight as a massive claw slowly emerged from the mouth of the colossal beast. Following that, Tang Ji, carrying Conhu, broke through the barrier. The moment they exited, Conhu suddenly froze. Shortly after, the darkness in his pupils began to spread across the whites of his eyes. In an instant, the beast and the monk finally made it back to the human world. The beast's head gradually retracted, vanishing into the sky. Tang Ji embraced him as they landed atop a rooftop. Seeing this scene, Su Wei shouted in anger, "This kid, after all the effort we put into releasing him, why did you bring him back?" Tang Ki replied, "I'm trying to help you. Why are you still yelling at me?" But at that moment, Xiao Ren's feet suddenly appeared, with his pupils completely turning golden. Tang Ki was momentarily stunned before launching an attack, shattering those feet to pieces. And Conhu was knocked unconscious as well. "We've put in so much effort to subdue him. He suddenly completed everything with a single strike. Just moments ago, he had the breath of a human, and now he had transformed into something else." Regardless, since this involved matters of humanity, they had no right to intervene. The two then set up a teleportation array to return. But the fat man still had his doubts. How could Tang Ki know he's still human? The skinny sister mentioned a type of cypress tree, which was a proprietary secret of the Tao. But for someone so young to have cultivated this cypress, that's truly impressive. After the two left, Tang Ki gazed at the unconscious Conhu. He felt lost, unsure of what to do. Just then, a furious roar erupted from behind. Han Long Kui, with a dark expression, said, "Thank you for returning. In 3 minutes. If not, you'll face the consequences." Tang Ki broke into a cold sweat and forced a smile. Upon returning to headquarters, Conhu was taken into the laboratory. 2 researchers were examining her condition while a few others monitored from outside the glass. Reports indicated that over 100 people had died at the site, while there were no casualties elsewhere. Hearing this, Tan Long Kui immediately erupted in fury. Han Long Kui pointed menacingly at Tang Ki. Tang Ki had never expected the mission in Egypt to turn into a situation in Bunnet. He hastily explained that he had merely accepted the order and gone there. However, it seemed Xiao Ren had sensed danger and had slipped away early. He then cast a suspicious glance at Conhu. Is she considered a human or a monster now? At that moment, a researcher held a huge syringe, preparing to draw blood for examination. Yet, even with the bent needle, it couldn't penetrate her skin. Then he saw another researcher emerge with a power drill in hand. He said, "Let me handle this." This girl, with just a single drop of blood, had the power to explode an entire laboratory. Just recently, the researchers had to use a drill to extract her blood. Finally, they managed to obtain a drop and carefully placed it into the device below. Zhuang Xiaoran and the others watched this scene unfold on video. The data analysis revealed no difference compared to an ordinary person. But in an instant, the initial red blood began to swell and mix, transforming into a vibrant shade of blue. The researchers stood frozen, dumbfounded. At that moment, the glass container holding the blood shattered, and the synchronized screens instantly turned blue. Ban Long Kwai anxiously inquired. "What's happening?" The researchers hurriedly responded. "The blood is undergoing a transformation, possibly due to being away from its host for too long." They then synchronized the visuals from the researchers' perspective, revealing a chaotic laboratory. The machines exploded, releasing a cloud of black smoke. Who would have thought that just a single drop of blood could hold such power? The current conclusion is that when the girl is conscious, she is no different from an ordinary person. However, if NHA-N-TIAS brainwaves dominate, her body will undergo a transformation, turning her into a monster. The final conclusion is that she is a symbiotic being between human and monster. At this point, Zhuang Xiaoran also understood why Sovai couldn't recognize her as human. Suddenly, he heard someone call his name. When he turned around, it was Han Long Kwai. Smiling at him, Han Long Kwai then praised Zhuang Xiaoran's strength, commenting that a single slap from him had knocked someone out. After the compliment, he revealed the purpose of his visit. And Chu Nhi is now a symbiotic entity. And in Kwai Than, they do not allow the imprisonment of monsters, especially one considered an A-level bomb. Therefore, until the High Council finds a solution, it has been decided that Zhuang Xiaoran will be in charge of watching over her. Upon hearing this, Zhuang Xiaoran immediately broke into a cold sweat and quickly shook his head. He had promised his master that before leaving the mountain, he wouldn't get close to women, let alone live with them. But Han Long Kwai reassured him, saying there was no need to worry, as he would handle the matter with Zhuang Xiaoran's master. They must express their gratitude. If they couldn't agree, Zhuang Xiaoran would have to return to the mountain to continue his training. Upon hearing this, Zhuang Xiaoran immediately stiffened, his gaze resolute as he declared he was a responsible man and would take full responsibility. Such matters had now been settled. As Zhuang Xiaoran walked home, he sighed inwardly, feeling that the days ahead would not be easy. But just then, a thick mass of red threads suddenly appeared behind him. The ends of these red threads weaved through the skyscrapers, soaring into the distance. It then led to a mountain. At the mist-covered peak, there was a Taoist temple, and at the end of the rope was a massive compass. Beneath the compass lay a giant turtle, and faintly, a human figure appeared on its back. At that very moment, several strands of the rope on the compass began to snap one by one. And the person noticed this scene. Looking towards Zhuang Xiaoran, they muttered, "The ropes are breaking again." This person was none other than Li Geashuian, the leader of the most powerful organization in history, the Mat Feng. His mount was a colossal turtle of indeterminate age named Tung. Currently, he was on a call with the person he referred to as Chu Nai Luan, Han Long Kwai. Upon hearing this name, Han Long Kwai's rage flared up explosively. He bellowed, "Li Geashuian, why are you being so unprincipled?" Li Geashuian smiled knowingly, guessing that the purpose of the call was related to recent events concerning Zhuang Xiaoran. Han Long Kwai looked at him in astonishment. "How did you know?" He seemed like a wise man dwelling outside the mundane world. Pleased, he boasted about his predictions, rambling on about trivialities that only served to infuriate Han Long Kwai, who promptly hung up. As he glanced at his phone, he heard the beeping sound. Li Geashuian found it quite amusing, mentally applauding him for maintaining his high position. His temperament remained unchanged. The turtle beneath him felt a tinge of worry regarding Zhuang Xiaoran, as a few strands of the red thread had snapped just moments ago. Perhaps it was a good opportunity to take a divination, but he decided it wasn't the right time, just a few strands. After all, this meant that Zhuang Xiaoran still had a chance. Meanwhile, in Chu Nhi's consciousness, she transformed into a figure of pure white. Looking at herself, she felt a bit confused and turned to look around, only to be surrounded by an obscure, black mist. Just as she was in shock, a figure appeared behind her, and Chu Nhi turned around, and to her surprise, it was Nhan Chu. Seeing that terrifying face, she suddenly remembered the eerie figure from the car accident. Nhan Chu didn't say a word, merely raising his hand slightly. Then, with a slight movement of his finger, and Chu Nhi's body suddenly became translucent. Her pale lips transformed into a stream of light, scattering in all directions. How powerful was this man? Even by targeting the most vulnerable part of his body, he could still injure others. In that instant, with Nhan's gentle gesture, and Chu Ni's body grew more and more ethereal. Suddenly, she woke up in her bed, Was it all just a dream? But at this moment, she looked around and realized that she was in an unfamiliar place. And her clothes had also been changed. A cool, comfortable feeling washed over her. As she glanced down, her face immediately turned red, and she couldn't help but think of other things. Had anyone noticed something was wrong? Then came a flurry of events: the car accident, the sight of green fireworks, followed by being chased by repulsive monsters. Finally, a man descended from the sky to rescue her, lifting her into the air. Thinking of that radiant figure, she couldn't help but doubt whether that boy truly existed. Perhaps it was merely her longing for protection that had conjured him in her imagination. At this moment, Nhai wore a somewhat melancholic expression, wishing that a man like that would protect her. Just then, the door swung open, and the man she had just been thinking about entered, holding a toothbrush. Clad in battle armor, he suddenly appeared before Nhai. Witnessing this scene, her heart shattered. Was it possible that he had stripped off his own clothes? The man she had always admired turned out to be such a creature. Filled with rage, Nhai hurled a pillow at him. Meanwhile, Zhuang sensed the tense atmosphere and quickly stepped in beside her. The initial chaos erupted. All she heard was a noise, followed by Nhai curling up, trembling on the ground. Zhuang, infuriated, exclaimed, "I rescued you out of kindness, and yet you attack me!" Nhai shouted at him, branding him a pervert. Who gave him the right to undress her? Hearing this, Zhuang hurriedly explained, "I saw you drenched and feared you might catch a cold, so I just helped you bathe." The moment she heard the word bathe, Nhai's skin crawled, and she gritted her teeth, demanding answers from him once more. Zhuang, realizing the misunderstanding had deepened, called for someone behind him to step forward. Following his gaze, Nhai immediately spotted a massive, ghastly creature. Its body a sickly green. Could this be the infamous Bai? Do not be deceived by his monstrous exterior. Inside, he was just a small 5-year-old girl. At this moment, Nhai, still in shock, heard that this very creature had bathed her. Instantly, she dove behind the bed, screaming in a fit of rage, while the monster realized it was being shunned. Tears streamed down his cheeks as he hunched over, sobbing inconsolably. Seeing this, Zhuang rushed over to comfort him, urging Nhai to apologize. He explained, "Don't judge him by his size, he's really just a kind-hearted 5-year-old in the monster world." Upon hearing this, Nhai realized her mistake and hurriedly offered her apology. However, she still struggled to understand the situation regarding the monster. Zhuang told her that in this world, humans and monsters coexist, but ordinary people remain unaware. Moreover, there was a monster within her as well. Nhai remained puzzled, a multitude of questions swirling in her mind. Zhuang, feeling a headache coming on, instructed the small monster to explain everything to her. The little monster complied, stepping forward to greet her and began to narrate. In truth, monsters had existed in this world long ago, and most of them regarded humans as mere food. Initially, humans had no means to resist monsters, thus becoming victims, gradually decimated over the years. Eventually, some individuals with special abilities emerged, capable of standing against monsters. They formed an organization named Secret Method, tasked with protecting humanity. From that moment on, humans could restrain monsters, and the monsters dared not harm them easily. However, this also incited discomfort among human rulers. The Mat Fung organization was continuously oppressed, and soon after, monsters took the opportunity to launch a large-scale attack. However, by that time, Mat Fung no longer had the strength to resist. At this critical moment, the founder of Mat Fung used a mysterious gemstone to seal most of the monsters within it. This magical artifact was called the Heavenly Seal. After this event, monsters and humans signed a treaty for peaceful coexistence, and Kwai Than II was established to oversee any remaining monsters with the potential to harm humans. And Nhai continued to inquire about the monster within her. However, the little creature knew nothing, only able to suggest. She asked Zhuang. At that moment, Zhuang happened to arrive, noticing Nhai, signaling that it was time for serious business. And Nhai felt perplexed and confused. Zhuang voice resonated, urging, "Quick, to the bed." This man was genuinely telling the girl to hurry to the bed. And Nhai's face flushed red with panic, questioning what he intended to do. Zhuang quickly clarified that a monster was gradually developing within her. If left unchecked, her consciousness would be completely devoured by the monster. And Nhai suddenly recalled the creature that appeared in her dream. Could it be the same? Shortly after, she witnessed Zhuang performing a strange gesture with his hands. Then, he grinned wickedly, stating that he had never had the chance to use this technique before. And this was the perfect opportunity for some practice. With that, he pointed at Ni's forehead. A beam of golden light flashed, his mana flowing freely, and then Nhi collapsed onto the bed. The little monster, witnessing this, was about to speak when Zhuang Ka unexpectedly fell down as well. In the realm of consciousness, Nhi transformed into a pure white light, slowly opening her eyes, but this time, she realized her body felt weak, unable to move. Then, she heard Zhuang Ka's voice. This is not a dream. She couldn't move because her consciousness was gradually fading. Consciousness was like streams of white light. If it completely vanished, it would mean death. However, he reassured her that she need not worry. As long as we defeat that being before you disappear, everything will be fine. At this moment, Niu stood by, watching the scene unfold. Zhuang Ka, grinning maliciously, approached, feeling the thrill of battling within the realm of consciousness. Niu was left wondering what he was thinking. However, his gaze became heavy. Zhuang Ka stepped closer, tilting his head to look at him. It seems your consciousness has been restored. Then let us engage in combat. Niu quickly launched an attack, striking him in the face, then followed up with a punch. The lightning-fast punch struck his head. Zhuang Ka stumbled back a few steps, initially hit, creating a large dent. Niu wanted to continue his assault, but suddenly, his body instinctively reacted, seeking to escape. Only after putting some distance did he feel a rush of fear. Is this person truly that powerful? He seemed like an ordinary man, yet radiated such a dangerous aura. At that moment, Zhuang Ka's expression betrayed his fury. The wound on his head began to heal gradually. Don't you know when you fight, you don't strike the face? HMPH. It seems SG truly lives up to its name, capable of inflicting wounds upon me. But now, it's my turn to strike back. Just as he prepared to attack, a colossal figure emerged behind him, swiftly restraining him. In the realm of consciousness, Ren Tiao could transform into countless avatars. Though their speed didn't match his, their power was not to be underestimated. As soon as he finished speaking, countless avatars of Ren Tiao surged forth from all directions. Zhuang Xie gazed at this scene without a hint of panic. It turned out that the true avatar was rather dull. He summoned his strength to first break free from the bindings, then shouted loudly to unleash his true emotions. When he saw Zhuang Xie transform into a giant, Ren Tiao felt a flicker of worry. Beneath that massive form, he felt like a mere fly. He wanted to quickly recall the avatars to their original positions. The avatars, receiving the command, immediately retreated, but it was too late. Zhuang Xie raised his fist and struck down fiercely, unleashing a powerful wave that swept toward the fleeing avatars. Ren Tiao could hardly believe his eyes. To think that a single blow could annihilate them all, but there was no time for doubt. Zhuang Xie looked at him with a devilish grin. Did he think he could frighten him with mere avatars? I'll teach you what true invincibility means. In an instant, Ren Tiao was knocked unconscious. Meanwhile, Nh's consciousness gradually began to awaken. At this moment, Zhuang Xie urged her to visualize a vessel to trap the person inside. Her time was running out. She couldn't stay trapped in his consciousness for too long. But what to use? Nha found herself in a state of hesitation. Just as Zhuang Xie was about to vanish, she finally made her decision. Zhuang Xie turned his gaze skyward, where a massive lipstick appeared. While Ren Tiao was trapped inside the lipstick, this girl awoke to find a tail sprouting from her backside. After sealing Ren Tiao the night before for her safety, Nha had no choice but to remain here. But the next day, Zhuang Xie and the little spirit were awakened by piercing screams. When they reached Nh's room, they discovered a dog tail wagging behind her. At that moment, Nha felt utterly defeated. What the hell is happening? Why is there a tail on my backside? Zhuang Xie found it quite cool. He remarked that he also wanted a tail like that, but as soon as he said it, he sensed something was off. Turning around, he saw the dog tail pointing straight at him. Quick as lightning, Zhuang Xie spun away, but the tail in midair changed direction once more, aiming right at him. Soon after, the two began a relentless dance of attack and evasion. Zhuang Xie leaped high, and the tail followed closely. After landing, Zhuang Xie quickly devised a plan. Seizing the opportunity when the tail exposed its weakness, he charged straight towards Nha. As he approached, he suddenly slowed down and crouched low, just as the sharp bone was about to pierce Nha. It came to an abrupt halt. Zhuang Xie confirmed his suspicions, thinking, how intriguing. Then he began to assess the sharpness of the bone. After a few tests, and Nhwa was suddenly surprised to discover that she could control it. In the face of the little spirit's attacks, the sharp bone could automatically block them all. In the end, she reached a conclusion. The power of that tail alone had reached B class. Yet Nhwa appeared unsatisfied, fearing that going outside would make her seen as a monster. With Zhuang Xiaoran's help, she devised a way to concentrate her spirit and imagine retracting it. And Nhwa focused intently, murmuring, "Reel it back." Surprisingly, the tail obediently began to vanish. After resolving everything, Zhuang Xiaoran's phone buzzed. He thought it was news of a new job and eagerly opened it. But his expression changed instantly. It turned out to be Han Longquai ordering him to halt all other missions. The little spirit noticed his troubled expression and asked if something was wrong. Zhuang Xiaoran raised his phone, his face filled with frustration. "I've lost my job." Upon hearing this, Nhwa instantly had an idea. "We could take on side jobs, I'll handle the applications. Then we'll become a duo fighting spirits together. What do you think?" Upon hearing this, Zhuang Xiaoran's smile blossomed, revealing his pearly white teeth. "As long as you can secure those side jobs, I'm in." Meanwhile, at an ancient villa, a group of children had gathered. To join this small group, a boy, despite his fear, agreed to the request to play hide and seek in the mirror. But as he entered the villa, the other children ran away. They left him all alone here. The boy, clutching a flashlight, trembled as he groped his way inside. Suddenly, a figure appeared before him and lunged toward him. Alone in the villa, he faced a terrifying ghost. The ghost rushed at him at breakneck speed, closing in fast. It uttered 3 words, "Leave quickly." The boy realized and screamed, running backward, but ahead, a terrifying figure blocked his path. "Don't go, play with me." Time flowed into the next day. While Nhwa was posting job listings online, she heard a knock on the door. Opening it, she saw a strange girl. The girl introduced herself. "I am Tu from yesterday." The stark contrast left Nhwa speechless. She compared herself to the girl and immediately lost confidence. Tu quickly explained that this was Lin Lang's ability to transform into a human form. And this outfit was specially chosen by Zhuang Xiaoran for her. Upon hearing this, Nhwa felt furious. She scolded, "You creep, how could you let a girl wear something like this?" Zhuang Xiaoran feigned innocence, saying, "I thought it would attract attention." This spirit pill was hard to come by. Even he couldn't understand what benefit it had for these 2 lumps of flesh. Seeing this foolish guy, Nhwa was momentarily at a loss for words. Meanwhile, at a luxurious villa, a subordinate hurriedly reported that 3 children had been found, but no trace of the young master was discovered in the villa. But strangely, the phone's position remained unchanged. Using a thermal sensor device to scan the interior, not a single rat was found. The man pondered for a moment. Could it be a spirit? Contact the organization and find the best expert. "I must save my precious son." The scene shifts to the next day as Nhwa finishes changing her clothes. She hears the voice of Zhuang Xiaoran. "Who would have thought he really has talent? He has already received an order for me early in the morning." And Nhwa stands there, bewildered. He doesn't understand what's happening. Soon, they arrive on the lower floor where 2 burly men are waiting beside a car. They exude a faint green glow. Zhuang Xiaoran chuckles softly. It seems this is a significant elixir. The car quickly arrives at a magnificent and imposing mansion. Seeing the enormous gate, Tanker can't help but exclaim, "Are they raising dinosaurs here?" But when he turns back, the 2 muscular men are already taking off their clothes. "Sorry, we don't want to ruin our outfits, they're quite expensive. This is all the boss's idea. You must defeat us within 5 minutes to have the right to meet him." Immediately, the 2 men, glowing with green light, transform into the true forms, 2 fierce-looking beasts with menacing faces and eyes full of bloodlust. Instantly, Thap Lang charges at Zhuang Xiaoran like a storm, but Zhuang Xiaoran remains calm, leaping into the air. Seeing his attack fail, Thap Lang grows even more frantic. Zhuang Xiaoran begins to take things more seriously, pulling his hand out of his pocket. Initially, he thought using just his legs would suffice, but suddenly, a flash of golden light shines. Under the pressure of the situation, Nhwa reluctantly steps back. Meanwhile, within the radiant glow, Zhuang Xiaoran battles Thap Lang like a whirlwind. Before either could react, Zhuang Xiaoran swiftly grabs the heads of the 2 wolves and crashes them together. Thap Lang's initially fierce face distorts from the impact. In the next moment, he is slammed to the ground, and the other wolf is held tightly and pinned down. Although Thap Lang had no intention of begging for mercy, in this moment, he feels a paralyzing fear. This simple punch brings him a sense of pressure capable of destroying a city. He hurriedly wags his tail in a gesture of surrender. and Qunha watches in shock at the scene before her. Only 5 seconds have passed since the battle began, and soon after, both are brought into the boss's chamber. Beside him is a masked youth eager to test Zhuang Xiaoran's strength, boasting that the scars on his body were caused by him, having defeated them in just 2 seconds. The boss says nothing, clearly in agreement with this action. I wonder which will bring more joy, our sword or your punch. The masked youth finishes his words and swiftly draws his sword, aiming directly at Zhuang Xiaoran. This move is called Broken Jade Rising Sun. In an instant, a flurry of sword light surrounds Zhuang Xiaoran, but in the next moment, he is sent flying. Zhuang Xiaoran retracts his hand and declares, I detest those who lack manners. The boss claps in approval, expressing his admiration. It seemed that no one but you could take on this mission. He then spoke about his missing son, tears streaming down his face as he pleaded, please help me find my son. I will pay any price. Zhuang Xiaoran was excited, as long as the opponent was strong enough. Meanwhile, and Qunha's eyes lit up. I will take on this mission. I will definitely help you find him. But just as the words were spoken, a boy walked in, and Qunha turned to look at the boy, who had a ghost pressing down on his back. When the boy was placed down, his eyes were vacant, like those of someone in a vegetative state, but his soul was in torment. The master rushed over and asked if the boy was possessed. Zhuang Xiaoran explained that this was a condition known as lost soul, where the 7 souls and 3 spirits are incomplete. If they aren't retrieved by tonight, the boy will die. Hearing how serious the situation was, the master immediately clung to Zhuang Xiaoran's legs, begging for help. At that moment, and Qunha noticed something, pointing to the boy's ear, and Qunha said there was something there. Zhuang Xiaoran moved closer to the bed and used his ghost manipulation technique. He saw a few tentacles moving slowly in the ear and then quickly retreating at an incredible speed. The boy had already lost his 3 souls and 7 spirits and was also possessed by a demon. If they couldn't retrieve them by tonight, he would die. A ghost now shot out from the boy's ear at an incredible speed. Just as Zhuang Xiaoran started to chase after it, the ghost was suddenly sliced in half by a young man with a somewhat middle-aged appearance. Seeing the small black mark on his hand, Zhuang Xiaoran frowned. Isn't this the magic technique of the Feng Tian sect? Weren't they wiped out long ago? At this moment, the scene shifted to a picturesque house where a man holding a pipe was mumbling to himself. A spoiled bean. Is there anyone who could push me to this extent? It must be someone from the Mao Shan sect. It won't be long before we meet, the man mused. Back with Zhuang Xiaoran, the young man with a middle-aged appearance removed his mask. We are the Yin-Yang Tigers. Only the strongest can see my true face. I am Zhuang Dao, portrayed by Ku Tuan. However, Zhuang Xiaoran remained indifferent and sighed. He led Qunha away, heading toward the ancient manor. Time passed quickly, and night had already fallen. As the two arrived in front of the ancient manor and were about to open the door to enter, a voice echoed in Qunha's mind. It was the voice of Nhan Chu. Don't go in, one of his eyes has turned black, the voice warned. At that moment, Qunhan fell into a state of altered consciousness. Before him stood a jar, and Nhan Chu emerged from within. He slowly regressed, turning into a dried-up corpse. Then she transformed into a faceless girl. Don't go in, I don't want to be trapped again, the boy kept repeating, crying as he spoke. Loneliness, pain, and fear surged in his heart. Outside of his consciousness, and Qunhan also shed tears and was awakened by Zhuang Xiaoran. And Qunhan recounted what had just happened. Zhuang Xiaoran explained that it was normal for Nhan Chu's memories to occasionally resurface. With me here, what are you afraid of? If there's danger, just stand behind me. Hearing these words, and Qunhan felt a sense of reassurance as he followed Zhuang Xiaoran inside. However, the moment he stepped through the threshold, an unsettling sensation washed over him, as if someone were lurking in the shadows, watching. Moreover, the atmosphere around him shifted dramatically. He turned to glance back at the door. Indeed, the entire ancient floor seemed to be suspended, gently floating in the air, creating a surreal spectacle. This colossal castle drifted amidst the skies. Zhuang Xiaoran explained that they had likely entered another dimension, and now he needed to harness his powers to break through it. Moments later, 3 thunderous orbs were launched into the sky. Yet, they vanished into the distance. Such grand magic appeared to have no effect. Witnessing this, Zhuang Xiaoran couldn't help but feel embarrassed. The two pushed open the door to the hall, where a monstrous spirit named Lak Dai Thuk emerged from the wall. However, it was merely of the lowest tier. Zhuang Xiaoran only needed to radiate his aura and stare at it, causing the creature to tremble in fear and faint. Yet, as the two ascended the stairs, it mocked them, saying, "You think you can find my boss, you're just fledglings, unaware of the vastness of the world. So, you were pretending to be dead." Zhuang Ka felt a surge of anger as he slowly approached. But suddenly, a monstrous figure appeared behind him, reaching out to snatch Conhan away. Hearing a scream, he turned, only to find her gone. The headless painting on the wall had also disappeared, and Conhan now found himself in a different corridor. Since being separated, he could only cautiously explore on his own. Suddenly, a group of children ran past him, but before he could chase after them, those children slipped through a door, and Conhan immediately followed. Upon opening the door, he discovered a room filled with strange, viscous liquid. On the adjacent wall hung a family portrait, likely of the house's owner, but it had been torn to shreds. The liquid on the bed appeared to be blood, and the floor showed signs of dragging. Following the trail of blood, he entered another room and stumbled upon a diary. Inside, it detailed how the man of the house had brutally murdered his wife and children. Just as Conhan was engrossed in reading the diary, he heard a creaking sound from the wardrobe beside him. Then, a fiery breath rushed out. Taking a deep breath, he approached. At that moment, the ghost of a little girl appeared in midair, gazing at Conhan. She opened her mouth to say that she had led him here, seeking his help to retrieve the wrapping paper that enclosed her body. In return, she would share the story of this house with him, revealing that her remains were hidden within the wardrobe. And Conhan stepped closer to open the wardrobe. But the sight that met his eyes sent chills down his spine. Inside the wardrobe lay a burial shroud pinned with nails to the forehead. This brutal scene struck deeply at his nerves. In that moment, Conhan recalled his own harrowing experiences and, filled with rage, tore the shroud apart. The little girl was finally freed. She joyfully thanked her sister, but that breath was instantly pierced through her body. "I am not your sister. My name is Deep Ku. I just want to see who dares to imprison me." On a stormy night, a man cradled a baby and approached this desolate ancient building. He placed the baby in this room, then turned his back on the child's cries and walked away. At that moment, the door slammed shut, and from the dark corner of the room, pairs of red eyes glimmered ominously. Almost immediately, a large rat bolted out, and within moments, a swarm of rats descended upon the baby. In no time, the baby was engulfed, leaving only a pair of terrified eyes behind. Time returned to the present, and the girl now appeared anxious. "The soul has been shattered. That little rodent must be furious. Before I vanish, please listen to me. He can manipulate the space of this house. All attacks are futile. In this realm, he is invincible. Perhaps there is a way to defeat him. I've seen it before." The girl couldn't finish her sentence before tentacles emerged from behind, slicing through and dragging her into another space. Chu, witnessing the door disappear, followed suit. As he entered, he heard a voice. "You have ruined your sister's soul. But that's all right, as long as I can devour you. We can still be together." Then he saw a monster bearing the face of Tun. "Your sister is gone, now you must be by my side." Chu, furious, shouted, "Let him go, or I will beat you until you regurgitate." Upon hearing this, Chu acted like a spoiled child. "I hate being scolded. If you don't obey me, I will have no choice but to consume you." Seeing Chu struggling to contain himself, he lunged forward. "Then let's see what you can do." Chu stood still, extending two fingers. "Didn't your sister tell you in this place? I am a god," with each finger slowly tightening around the charging figure. His limbs contorted like twisted braids. A sharp pain surged through him. Chu collapsed, clutching his leg. "I'm truly sorry, brother. If you won't listen to me, I have no other choice. If you don't want to stay with me, then I'll just have to break your legs. Just like that boy with the hat yesterday." Deep down, it's all about loneliness. Here, there's an abundance of delicious food and intriguing games. Yet he still wishes to return. I'll only consume half of his soul to let him go back. Chu, I've heard eating your flesh could enhance my power. Then let's do it. Just leave your limbs behind, and I will set you free. I will ask one more time, do you want to stay with me? Chu resolutely stood up, his gaze icy as he stared down at him. "To kill you, I only need one hand." But no sooner had he spoken, his arm twisted like a braid, followed by his innards writhing in agony. At this moment, Chu could no longer endure. A spurt of fresh blood erupted, splattering all over Chu. Chu choked out 3 words, "You are finished." Immediately, a blood orb formed in his hand and was hurled aside at Chu as his grip tightened. Suddenly, around Chu Ye, an explosion erupted. This technique was known as the Six Harmonies treasure. As the smoke dissipated, hundreds of souls soared into the air, including those of a girl and the son of a billionaire. Chu Ye, however, was left with only half of his lower body. But the events were far from over. The girl flew closer, revealing the origins of Chu Ye. At first, he was merely a dark monster who had devoured countless rats and a child. The corpse of that child lay on the 3rd floor if it could be found. It would spell the complete annihilation of Chu Ye. Just as she finished speaking, a massive mouth suddenly clamped down on her. Next, Chu Ye transformed into a creature with countless mouths. En Chu coughed up blood, realizing that his body was no longer effective, rendering him immobile. His internal organs suffered serious damage. The monster stood before him. At that moment, he had no strength left to fight. Was this the end? It was a pity that the boy had yet to be found. But just then, a powerful surge of energy erupted from beneath the monster's feet. The monster let out a wretched howl as it was blasted away. Behind it, Zhuang Xiaoran appeared, his expression innocent as if he had just collided with something. He immediately noticed Chu Enan lying motionless on the ground, her limbs distorted. Witnessing this scene, Zhuang Xiaoran's face darkened with a terrifying gloom. "Who did this to you?" a voice from behind rang out. "It was me." Chu Ye crawled closer, his eyes glinting with malice as he stared intently. He raised a hand to point at Zhuang Xiaoran, intending to crush him, but around Zhuang Xiaoran, there seemed to be a transparent shield. Inside, he was completely unaffected. Chu Ye remained astonished as Zhuang Xiaoran was enveloped in electric currents, coldly fixing his gaze upon him. Then, his finger traced a circle on the ground, and a net of thunder and lightning instantly surrounded Chu Ye, making him tremble uncontrollably. The screams of anguish echoed continuously. At that moment, Chu Enan had regained consciousness, urging Zhuang Xiaoran to find his true form. Without hesitation, Zhuang Xiaoran activated the spirit link, meticulously searching before dashing to the 3rd floor, standing before a child's corpse. After dealing with the true form, Chu Ye could no longer endure. He gradually faded into the air. But as he vanished, the dark spirit of a child emerged. This child had been imprisoned by the cursed plant, trapping the souls of 2 children. "I want to see my mother. Dad left me here for the rats to gnaw at, and now a monster has claimed my soul. Mother must be very worried about me being missing." The girl beside him wanted to comfort him but was interrupted by the cursed plant, which recounted the monster's memories. "That dark monster was my father, of the same age as me." This meant that the steward had brought a soul and possessed the body of the head of the family. Who was the girl's father? The goal was to turn this place into a haunted house to seize everything. Subsequently, the head of the family was enchanted, his mind becoming chaotic and suspicious of everything around him. He suspected his wife was having an affair with the steward, which led him to murder his entire family, ultimately ending his life by his own hand. In the end, to facilitate manipulation, he chose to inhabit a child whose mind was still incomplete. Upon hearing this, the girl finally released the burden in her heart. She had always believed that her father's transformation had its reasons. She knew about the mother from the same generation, but she couldn't bring herself to tell him. It was a scene she had accidentally witnessed after her father had turned into a spirit. On that day, the butler placed an antique clock in the old house, and at that very moment, his wife happened to stumble upon it. With what the butler had done, everything slowly became clear. She guessed that the death of the entire master's family was caused by him and that he had forged the documents to transfer all the property to himself. His wife, being a woman of conscience, wanted to report it to the authorities, but she was brutally killed by the heartless butler. After that, the butler returned to the old house. Upon opening the door, he saw that his child had turned into a monster. And in the end, there was no escape. Everyone had perished in this tragic catastrophe. The girl still didn't tell Sun Lin about any of this. Using magic, she transformed into Sun Lin's mother and then conjured up the scene of a family eating together. They looked very happy. Sun Lin smiled happily. The girl then approached to say goodbye. "Thank you both for helping us find release. And thank you for helping me. Your brother, within your body, could sense the loneliness and suffering I had endured all these years, which is why he wanted to completely destroy me. I am truly grateful to all of you." After speaking, the 2 small souls slowly faded away into the air. Soon after, the space around the old house gradually returned to its original form. Zhuang Xiaoran retrieved the boy's soul and then, holding in Chu Nha, walked toward the city. To combat supernatural abilities, a group of talented individuals organized themselves into different sects. Among them, the most prominent were 5 secret sects known as the 5 Elephants of Silence. The strongest among them was the Tao sect, which was divided into 2 branches, Ma Jia and Feng Tian. Ma Jia specializes in strategy and can cultivate wind and thunder to enhance combat strength, while Feng Tian focuses on divination and the cultivation of elixirs, rarely participating in demon exercising activities. Later on, it's unclear when, but Feng Tian began to interfere in politics. To gain power and fame, they became advisors to the king. However, their joy was short-lived, as soon after, a large-scale war between humans and spirit beings erupted. The cultivators of the secret sects, despite their power, could not resist because the spirit beings kept coming in overwhelming numbers. In the end, the Feng Tian sect deployed their forces, but they were all killed in that battle. After settling the boy's soul, Zhuang Ka held an Chu Nha and returned. However, the wealthy patriarch raised his hand, hoping that Zhuang Ka could investigate this sudden emergence. Zhuang Ka revealed that the Black Bean was Feng Tian's secretary, and this script should never be made public. It is highly likely that this is a remnant of the Great War. But such powerful forces should not be wielded through foul means. I will surely unearth the one behind this. At that moment, they had returned home. Yaya brought out Chiu Hak to welcome in Chiu Enna, who looked at this strange creature with curiosity, wondering how many it had raised. Just over 100, Yaya answered. As they were chatting, suddenly, a formation appeared on the ground. Yaya exclaimed joyfully, "A wood 5 spirits has arrived. This formation, known as the Huang Dao, can connect to another world." Yaya held Chiu Hak and knelt down. A wood 5 spirits is a revered guest to Zhuang Ka, but for the spirit beings, it is a sovereign. When the formation vanished, the Demon King had manifested. He was also known as the 5 constant ghosts, the lord of the city of Ye Lang Din. The 5 spirit beings represent joy, anger, sorrow, happiness, and thought, and Chiu Enna quietly sensed them, unable to grasp their aura at all. But just a fleeting glance made her shiver. Zhuang Ka turned around, smiling and greeting. "I'll just play a bit of a game and then head to bed. You all feel free." The Demon King was also very polite, apologizing for the disturbance. Then he turned to Yaya. He said, "Hand these over to me." A wood 5 spirits is also known as the 5 constant ghosts, representing joy, anger, sorrow, happiness, and thought. They are one of the lords of the city of Ye Lang Din. Yaya presented a box before them, and Chiu Enna couldn't help but wonder about the contents inside. Since the other party was a Demon King, it must be something of great importance inside. Could it be a powerful magic weapon? Just as she was lost in endless thoughts, the next moment, everything was turned upside down. A sudden voice echoed, and a wood 5 spirits had picked up the phone. Cheerfully, he walked up to the next floor, hearing a furious roar. "Bro, if you don't charge forward, I'm going to pull your ear down." "Oh right. Tu Zhuang Ka, Ku Lang has come with us. H is handling business at Dao Than too. He misses you a lot. Aren't you going to say hi?" Hearing the name Ku Lang, Zhuang Ka was immediately taken aback. "Forget it. Right now I'm being freed by the dragon, so I can't visit in Chiu Enna." At this moment, she was bewildered, realizing they had come here to play games. "Is the Demon King this leisurely too?" Yaya explained that they had come here for a vacation. Because of their acquaintance with Zhuang Ka, Ku Lang, who had just been mentioned, was the strongest among the spirit beings and was the one who constructed the space of the city of Ye Lang Din. Meanwhile, at the headquarters of Dao Than Tu, Ku Lang appeared with a relaxed demeanor, slowly approaching. "Is there any command?" Han Long Kai directly stated the reason for summoning him. "Recently, the number of casualties everywhere has been increasing. Your presence will soon be detected by the populace. Therefore, we would like to ask for your cooperation in crafting a special spirit artifact. There's one more thing to discuss, but we should wait until Master Li Xuan arrives." Hearing this, Zhu Lang felt a strange unease. Even Master Li must make an appearance. It seems something monumental is about to happen. The colossal turtle treats the airplane like a taxi. Li Yixuan continued to grumble. "After all, it's convenient, but it's still too slow." The turtle sighed helplessly. "I'm getting old. I can no longer fly any faster." In the control room of the demon city, Li Xuan smiled as he stood at the door, cheerfully saying, "It's been a while, my little dragon milk. Have you missed me?" Han Long Kai, hearing this name, couldn't contain his fiery temperament and drew his gun. Pulling the trigger, the bullet immediately flew towards Li Xuan. Yet it halted before him, playfully dancing in the air. Then Han Long Kai asked the reason for summoning him. With a serious expression, he replied that this was about the heavenly seal of the third world and led him to a secret location. The two descended 20,000 meters underground via an elevator. Han Long Kai clearly explained the situation. The core energy of the heavenly seal has been monitored by Demon City from start to finish. and the data has shown no changes. Recently, the energy value unexpectedly dropped but quickly returned to its original level. After hearing this, Li Xuan fell into deep thought. This issue is truly serious. The Patriarch's mystical arts are eternal no matter how much time passes. The flow of spiritual energy in the river remains unchanged. He proceeded to the colossal compass, activating it, and immediately, golden light radiated around. He then drew the Tai Chi symbol in the air. At his command, dozens of square pillars rose into the sky, growing taller until they touched the ceiling of the Grand Hall. From the highest pillar, a golden light emanated, revealing the true form of the legendary Heavenly Seal. Li Yixuan stepped up the stairs to the Heavenly Seal. He then performed a spell to check its condition. After a long moment, he slowly spoke. Reincarnation, you should return. Inform the Supreme Commander of the headquarters that someone is attempting to break the barrier in the mystical world. Meanwhile, all spirits are currently in a state of battle readiness. I will remain here to cast reinforcing spells. At the same time, in the mystical world, the shattered yellow crystal revealed the Void-Head Demon King rising. His target locked. Outside, the choir prepared to take action. Within 2 days, I will bring you all out. Several spirits kneeling on the ground received the order and respectfully responded. Yes. In a dim room, a well-dressed man bowed his head to offer incense. The disciple had sensed an emperor's aura within some destinies. I shall assist him. I will surely fulfill the lifelong wish of my master. The next day, the man prepared a tea set, seemingly waiting for someone. Soon after, Tang Ka was invited there. The man introduced himself as Xian Yu Tu of the Fang Xian sect. The chaos that erupted at the millionaire's mansion earlier was indeed orchestrated by him. However, there were no malicious intentions involved. It was merely a typical business rivalry. Today, he had invited Tang Qi, seeking to forge an alliance. Tang Qi felt a sense of wariness towards this unfamiliar figure. Tien Yu Tu continued, aren't you curious about your deity? Hearing this, Tang Qi momentarily froze, lost in memories. As a child, he had once asked his master where his parents were, but his master had always evaded the question. When you were just a child, I found you at the doorway of the Taoist temple. Your parents must have had their reasons, so they entrusted you to me. This answer clearly left Tang Qi skeptical, yet his master offered no further details. My abilities can help you unravel the mystery surrounding your divine origins. But we must become true allies. At this moment, Tang Qi felt a twinge of hesitation. His master refused to divulge more, leaving him with no choice but to trust this enigmatic figure and investigate further. Meanwhile, in an abandoned warehouse, a large congregation of supernatural beings knelt before a strange toad-shaped speaker, attentively listening to its commands. Following the recent suppression of their leader, Li Yixuan, they were now setting their sights on their second target, Daocheng Temple. Ranked first. After Tang Qi spoke, he expelled a dark golden orb from his mouth. This artifact, known as the Song Hu Lin, could awaken the ancient spirits buried beneath the earth. The larger spirits, receiving the command, refrained from using the Song Hu Lin alone and transformed into human forms. Heading towards the city, not long after, a spirit named Ying Yuan grasped the Song Hu Lin and trudged to the seaside. Muttering anxiously to himself, don't worry, we will definitely change this world. With that, he leaped into the water, transforming into the ancient spirit of Agi. I will awaken you now, so don't let us down. After a brief period, he emerged above the water, confronted by a massive offshore oil platform. Before him lay the remains of a colossal beast, long dead for years. Who knows how many have perished over the years now. Someone dares to awaken it. Wake up, you lazy one. As soon as the words left his lips, the enormous stones around him began to shift ominously closer. Before long, a gigantic monster erupted from the depths of the water. Simultaneously, alarms blared loudly. On the massive screen, an image of a colossal spirit approaching the city materialized. Preliminary investigations revealed that the threat level had exceeded the warning threshold. At the current speed, it would reach the city center in just 7 hours. The A-level team was currently on a mission. It seemed they had no choice but to rely on them. Han Long Kuai immediately acted without hesitation, swiftly contacting Tu Wei Duang, urging them to mobilize all forces. Before long, a teleportation circle appeared above the monster. Tu Wei Duang, one of the 4 major factions of Langding Love City, dispatched 12 meticulously selected leaders each week to confront the impending threat. Because of their special status, they had to wear verdigris bronze masks, which also symbolized their identities. Aside from the Deputy Hall Master, the Tavai were considered the strongest fighting force of Langdin Demon City. At this moment, all 12 Tavai had been teleported here, Upon seeing the colossal demon before them, everyone was astonished. Nuk Don Lao Tu stepped forward to probe first. Immediately afterward, he transformed himself, becoming as large as a giant beast standing before the immense demon. Although I don't know who awakened you, may I invite you to return to your original place. I assure you that from now on, no one will disturb you again. However, the colossal monster paid no heed and continued its advance, seemingly a soulless spirit devoid of thought. Lao Ku, without a moment's hesitation, raised his shield before the beast. The clash echoed as the creature's steps faltered momentarily. Its enormous eyes locked onto Lao Ku, as if pondering something inscrutable. Then, with a swift motion, it swung its arm, sending both man and shield hurtling away. Observing this, Lao Tam quickly devised a strategy. It seemed the only option was to banish it. A decisive command rang out. Instantly, the group charged towards the monster. Lao Muoi approached the creature. Channeling a spell, ethereal images and waves of green light spread forth, causing the monstrous being to lose its consciousness. In that moment, Lao Tu and Lao Ngu swiftly conjured ropes and vines. They ensnared its two arms. At that moment, a strange face glowed red on Lao Ku's shield. It split apart and expanded in the air, then sealed off the surroundings of the creature. As it closed in, it formed a square dome, imprisoning it within. Immediately, Lao Tam pointed skyward, casting the spell Ling Lang Ancient Tower. A colossal beam of green light erupted into the sky. Following that, a swirling black shadow, accompanied by dark clouds, descended heavily, crashing into the dome. The shadow took the form of an ancient tower, as dark as ink. The others formed seals before them, condensing a black sphere. The sphere slowly ascended to the tower's peak, moving deliberately. From here, Heavenly Pillar Earthquake added another layer of seal upon the monster. Yet, before the group could catch their breath, in an instant, countless beams of light shot out from the tower. The tower shattered, and the monster burst through the top, clearly indicating that these seals could not restrain it. Lao Tan let out a helpless sigh. At the level of a monster like this, only the top-tier leaders could stand against it. After sending him off, Han Long Khui furrowed his brow. It seemed the only option left was to use the final card. This ancient creature was on its way to the human city. At a crucial moment, Zhuang Xiaoran received a command and hurriedly made his way there. He also carried a cleansing artifact that could create a parallel space. However, it could only be maintained for 5 minutes. Once activated, he enveloped the entire surrounding area with a protective barrier. The space continuously expanded, forming a region with a diameter of 4 kilometers. Within this space, there were only the two of them. Zhuang Xiaoran, electrified with excitement, felt the thrill surge through him. I wonder if my Thunder God can defeat you. The colossal monster halted, its vacant gaze scanning the surroundings. Emitting a low growl, with a wicked smile, Zhuang Xiaoran, unhurried, declared, I shall bring you a tonic. As soon as the words left his lips, a sphere of thunder and lightning materialized around him, pulsating with electric energy, before soaring towards the monster. Upon impact, the electric sphere expanded rapidly, ultimately enveloping the creature entirely. In this chaotic realm, thunder and lightning roared, conjuring a tempest of storms. Moments later, as the thunder subsided, the ground revealed a bottomless pit. From within this abyss, a flame burst forth. At its core flickered a green nucleus. Subsequently, the remnants of the monster from beneath the earth coalesced around it, forming a protective shell. This amalgamation birthed a dark sphere. Within this shadowy orb, a spirit slowly opened its eyes. Stretching its limbs, an immense force erupted, creating a whirlwind that swept across the area, exerting pressure for miles. Then, it materialized. This spirit, known as the Moon God, was once revered as the mountain deity. Now, it had transcended even a sea key. Zhuang Xiaoran remained composed, recognizing that despite the transformation, the presence was still formidable. The Moon God uttered not a word. With a swift motion, it raised its arm, summoning a colossal force from the ground behind. Zhuang Xiaoran watched in fascination. You can manipulate the earth as well yet. Before he could finish, the Moon God launched a punch towards him. In an instant, the blow struck Zhuang Xiaoran in the abdomen, sending him flying like a bullet into a stone pillar. The pillar shattered, exploding into debris. Lying on the ground, Zhuang Xiaoran grinned wickedly, channeling 4 bolts of lightning to transform into the Thunder God. He leaped, lightning crackling around him. At that moment, the Moon God also descended. Prepared for confrontation, Zhuang Xiaoran surged forward with lightning speed, the air behind him shimmering with light. Within the blink of an eye, he unleashed a flurry of punches towards the Moon God, but all were effortlessly blocked. Zhuang Xiaoran, slightly surprised, thought, this punch is more focused now. He then delivered a powerful strike to the moon god's chin. The moon god did not defend, standing firm and absorbing the damage. Suddenly, a piece of flesh fell to the ground, unexpectedly transforming into another moon god. Appearing behind Zhuang Xiaoran, a lightning bolt struck his back. He instantly leaped into the air. Below, stones morphed into tentacles, ensnaring him. After evading the tendrils, they transformed into a sphere that confined him within. The moon god clenched its fist, the stones beginning to compress inward. A second later, the stone sphere erupted. Zhuang Xiaoran burst free, exclaiming, "You can be limited to these petty tricks. Show me your true power." Just as he finished speaking, he saw the moon god raise both hands, spinning in place to conjure a fiery whirlwind that surged towards him. Zhuang Xiaoran did not shy away. Instead, he dove in, embracing the force, eager to absorb it. However, he had grossly underestimated the power of this technique as the diamond light enveloping him shattered. Clothes turned to ash, his entire body flung away, crashing into buildings scattered across the city for hundreds of miles. Yet, his objective had been achieved. The moon god had expended a massive amount of demonic energy, making his defeat a mere formality. A piercing scream echoed, summoning the essence of purity. Countless golden lights began to converge around Zhuang Xiaoran. Sensing the peril, the moon god acted swiftly. But at the same moment, a golden arm struck towards him. He stood frozen in disbelief, unable to comprehend what he was witnessing as his arm shattered under the impact. Meanwhile, Zhuang Xiaoran had completed his transformation into the golden sovereign earth spirit. With a single blow, this man had shattered the arm of the colossal beast. The moon god, face filled with astonishment, decided to turn and flee. Witnessing this, Zhuang Xiaoran immediately pursued him. There was no time left for games. Two beams of light raced toward the city, landing on the ground. After touching down, the moon god slid a little, his wounded arm regenerating anew. He halted midair. Zhuang Xiaoran felt a hint of confusion. Why had he stopped fleeing just then? A green light swirled around his body, and a dark skeleton gradually enveloped him. He had fully transformed into a formidable figure clad in shadow. His aura multiplied dramatically. After his metamorphosis, the moon god raised his fist, propelling himself downward like a bullet. Zhuang Xiaoran had no time to react. Narrowly dodging the onslaught, losing interest in combat, he plummeted down, his entire being sinking into the earth below. Moments later, his silhouette abruptly emerged from the side, taking advantage of Zhuang Xiaoran's distraction. Swift as lightning, he lunged and attacked, retreating immediately after the strike. Not long after, he launched the same move again, bursting up from the ground like a relentless assassin, attacking relentlessly. Meanwhile, Zhuang Xiaoran remained still, unfazed. He unleashed his blows with ease. For to Zhuang Xiaoran, these strikes were mere trifles. At this moment, he activated the golden star mirror, rendering everything around him translucent. The traces of the moon god became vividly clear. When he attacked again, he met the full force of Zhuang Xiaoran's counter. One leg shattered, his body was slammed into a building, sent hurtling out of the city. Yet, just when he thought he had created enough distance, Zhuang Xiaoran caught up, preparing to unleash another powerful strike. The moon god barely managed to raise his hand to draw his dagger. Pressure from the distance weighed heavily upon him, forcing him down. Little did he expect that his defensive weapon would be so resilient. But there was no time for lingering. Zhuang Xiaoran, with his powerful hands, recited an incantation, and instantly, a pair of colossal hands appeared in the sky. "You are incredibly strong. Since descending from the mountain, I have never felt such comfort. But time is running short. This strike will determine everything." The moon god gazed at the scene before him, utterly bewildered. Yet, he knew there was no time left to flee, and all he could do was adopt a passive defense. Just then, colossal fists pounded down upon the ground, followed by a torrent of other attacks that engulfed the area. In an instant, millions of hands rained down like shooting stars, striking him relentlessly. The ground around him crumbled and shattered. After a while, as the dust settled, only a feeble form remained on the ground. Zhuang Xiaoran gazed at his battered body, understanding that he had been drained of all his strength. Even contact with the earth could not restore him now. In that moment, he moved, using his remaining arm to cut open his own belly and crawl toward the city. Zhuang Xiaoran looked at him with suspicion, wondering what he planned to do. In ancient times, a group of people had sought a suitable environment. They were migrating, until one day, they discovered an oasis hidden within the desert. Here, they built a home of their own. As time passed, they realized that the colossal mountain near the center of the oasis harbored wonders. The doctor and the townspeople observed that on certain nights, the mountain would suddenly emit a brilliant red glow. From then on, they revered the mountain as a deity that protected their oasis. They called the mountain the moon goddess and began to worship it. Yet, unbeknownst to them, whether due to their prayers or some other reason, the mountain gradually diminished over time. One night, the sky erupted with a deafening roar. The earth shook, sending humanity into a frenzy as they began to flee. The tribal leader, thinking of the moon goddess, led the people to that place to beseech her. Upon reaching the foot of the mountain, he was utterly stunned to witness the mysterious disappearance of the goddess. Instead, a being resembling a human emerged. Witnessing this scene, the people immediately knelt down in reverence, calling him the mountain god. As he learned to walk, he continued to tread forward, stepping out of the oasis into the desolate expanse of the desert. Turning back, he realized that the oasis of his birth was gradually emitting a vapor that slowly dissipated. If he left the oasis, it wouldn't be long before that place would become barren land. Perhaps it was instinct that urged him. He felt an undeniable need to remain in this oasis, to protect that sacred ground. From then on, he was revered by mankind as a deity. Although he was newly born and lacked typical emotions, he was deeply curious about everything around him. He began to mimic humans, attempting to eat and drink, only to realize he had no mouth, and therefore had no need for sustenance. Subsequently, he witnessed the laws of survival, the cycle of life, aging, sickness, and death. Life continued to be born anew. As time passed, he transformed from a child into an adult. Gradually, he began to feel a profound loneliness. Thus, he merged a part of his own essence to create another being, which humanity came to call the fish god. On that day, the bond between him and the fish god began to blossom. He then taught the fish god to walk, imparting all his skills. He guided the fish god through the vibrant tapestry of life surrounding them. Ultimately, he also showed the fish god how to harness its powers to protect the oasis. During their time together, the goddess gradually helped him understand the essence of love. Thus, they lived side by side like shadows for 100 years. Yet, their joy was fleeting. The climate worsened, and the desert encroached, devastating the environment and the oasis' existence. The mountain god, wishing to safeguard the oasis, nearly unleashed all of his magical energy, but it could not be sustained for long. The water source dwindled due to prolonged drought. The rain goddess sensed this. She felt the mountain god's anguish, leading her to make a crucial decision. The fish god released all of its powers. That power soared into the sky, transforming into a swirling black cloud. Soon after, a torrential downpour lasted for 3 days and 3 nights. This rainfall was sufficient to salvage the parched land. Once again, the oasis brimmed with life. However, in the end, the fish god was merely a tale. Releasing such immense power could only be seen as a form of suicide. Yet, as long as he could become the mountain god, the fish god felt no regret. The truth from the fish god had revealed the loneliness of the mountain god, a feeling he had never experienced before. Thus, he made a fateful decision, to continue protecting this oasis and to allow the fish god to survive. He offered up his own body. Embracing the fish god, he ultimately reincarnated into a colossal mountain, safeguarding this land and the one he loved. Humanity recorded and passed down the tale, erecting a stone monument. However, as time flowed on, they became forgotten by the world. When humanity discovered that Mount Uiyu harbored precious metals, they began mining recklessly. However, the mountain god's spirit was treated like mere rubble, cast into the sea. Upon entering the realm of the moon goddess, Zhuang Kai came to understand everything. His aim was merely a gigantic mountain on the outskirts. The city was but a temporary stop. Yet, the moon goddess lacked a mouth to communicate. Thus, she decided to elevate the weary form of the moon goddess into the sky. They quickly arrived at their destination, but upon arrival, they discovered the statue of the fish god had shattered. Fortunately, she could still sense a fragment of the fish god's soul, now fully intertwined with the mountain. At that moment, the moon goddess unleashed a radiant orb of light from her body, illuminating the surroundings. The stones nearby were immediately drawn to it. Enveloping the orb within, the mountain gradually began to regain its divine essence. The surrounding flora swayed gently toward the mountain in reverence. Zhuang Kai watched this scene, his heart swelling with respect. You truly are a worthy opponent. I hope no one shall disturb you again. He resolved to bury this land, transforming it into a nature sanctuary, not allowing humanity to take even a step inside. Meanwhile, in another realm, the land was lush with blooming flowers. He sat quietly on the ground, lost in thought. At that moment, he suddenly opened his eyes to see the moon goddess approaching. Finally, the two held hands tightly, standing amidst a sea of flowers. Words eluded them. Perhaps they were communicating through their souls, conveying the longing they felt for one another.